Before the next episode of X Job Downloaded starts, I have a big favour to ask. If you've enjoyed any of our episodes so far, please can you click on the follow button on your platform. I'm on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon and YouTube. It costs nothing to follow, but makes a real difference to me as a podcast producer. Thank you. This interview is being tape recorded. My name is Paul Malleary and this is X Job Downloaded. And this evening, I'm going to interview Laura Zimmerman. Now, Laura is a former member of the military and she now runs her own successful business where she carries out security work with a team of dogs. Good evening, Laura.
Good evening.
Laura, thanks for coming on here. I mean, we've had the pleasure of working together, but never actually meeting, so this is quite unusual. But where did life begin for Laura, and what is Laura all about?
Oh, that's a deep question. Where did life begin? Well, as you say in your introduction there, I am ex-military. So back in 2006, I signed on to join the armed forces, the army. I did my basic training, as you do, and became a tank transporter for the Royal Logistics Corp.
A tank transporter? What, yes. as in those big things that fire rounds from the front of them?
No, that's the actual tanks. I drove the Hets, the Oshkoshes.
Yeah, I know. But you carried those tanks around on the back of a truck.
Yeah, all 62, if I remember rightly, ton of them.
62 tons. I mean,
I think it was 62 off the top of my head, or 65 with it being the Reamy up variant.
So is that a Chieftain, or what model is that?
That would have. Well, we did them all. So, but I think off the top, I mean, someone will correct me if I'm wrong. That was the weight of the the Challenger.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're quite heavy bits of kit.
Yeah, they are. So, right, let me take you back a bit then, Miss. So you've gone to school, and did you wake up one morning and say, do you know what, I'm going to join the army and I'm going to transport tanks around?
Oh, no.
How did that all happen?
So I always wanted to be a dog handler. No matter what, always. I grew up with Great Danes, Staffordshire Bull Terriers, Bell Terriers, all sorts. And my dad was in the military as well, and so was my dad's dad. And when I was in my much younger years, I used to go to the cadets. And, you know, family thought it might have been a phase, but I actually really enjoyed it. Then I went and did all my GCSEs, business studies, graphic design, all that sort of stuff, and went on to further education to sixth form. And I left sixth form and then tasted civvy street, as you would call it.
Yep.
And I worked in like the supermarkets, a vehicle rental company, and all that sort of good stuff. And originally started off down in Devon and then moved to Bristol in a place called Chipping Sodbury. And one summer decided, right, well, if I wasn't going to do it, now I'd never do it. So went down to the Bristol Army Careers Office and signed on, basically.
Was that your first option, though, being going in the RLC?
So I passed the tests to do be in the veterinary corps. However, I was quite young at the time, and I was living in a flat above a little spa shop kind of thing, and the landlord at the time wouldn't extend the tenancy agreement for more than like 2 or 3 months.
Right.
So I was advised that if I joined in, because they had a big intake for spaces for it, I could join as RLC and then transfer to the trade I actually wanted to be whilst in basic training.
Right.
Which anybody who has heard that before will know it's almost a near darn impossible task to do. But naive little me went, right, no, come on, Ed, I'll give it a go. And so I joined in 2006, and after doing my basic training in Purbright, which was the same square that my dad and my dad's dad passed out as Coldstream Guards and Household Cavalry, I think it was.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I then went to Deep Cut, and that was a lot of fun. And then straight from Deep Cut to Leconfield, where it was quite apparent that I had very good spatial awareness. So flew through doing the your C&E heavy goods vehicle license.
Right.
And then was back down to racking my brains here. Then it was back down to Deep Cut. And then I got pulled into the office one day and said, how would you like to be a tank transporter? It's an A tray, they called it at the time. And only so many people were selected to go.
Yeah, I should think they were.
At the time, I wanted to stay sort of UK based, and was umming and ahhing because the first posting would have been in Germany. So sort of bit the bullet, and off I went to Germany, over in Fallingbostel, over to 16 Tank Transporter Squadron.
Which then we had the Army of the Rhine, didn't we? The British Army of the Rhine. So
when I tipped up in 2007, you had Iraq, and then it was Afghanistan kicking off. They had a rotation, so 4 troops, Poznan, Stettin, and 2 others, Warsaw, and God, the 4th one fails me. Out in Germany, and we basically, all the troops did a rotation. So if one was training to go, then you'd had one that was already out, one that was on what they call portal, so rest R&R, and then you had rear party,
right,
which basically were the domestic jobs in the area, supporting so we were on the, so Fallingbostel was huge. So you didn't just have the RLC there and the tank transporters. We were very small in comparison. So you had a rotation of, say, 4 Scots over there. We had the Fusiliers over there at one point. Loads of REME guys. And we used to support the exercises and all sorts, and just, they called it a drag. So you go on drag and you'd be going off to some sort of exercise area, picking up whatever tracked vehicles and then bringing them back, which could have taken us pretty much anywhere. So we've been to France, then we came over to the UK, and we travelled up and down the country. The guys have now left Germany, and they're currently, I believe, in Bulford.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
or Tidworth, probably.
So can I ask you then, I'm just asking, and I don't expect you to answer, but how many tanks are there in the British Army?
No idea.
I don't know how many there are. How long does it take to transport a 60-ton tank? Say
how long?
How long? To do 100 miles?
Well, the vehicles can only go, if it's in the UK, or you can only go 50 kilometres per hour.
Right.
So however long.
30 miles, 30 miles an hour in English money. Yeah,
so it's not very fast.
Wow. And how would you get a tank to Iraq? How would they send a Challenger out to Iraq?
They'd probably go on the back of the tank transporters, and they'd be shipped over by sea, or they'd go in the back of a plane.
I can't imagine. I mean,
I'd imagine.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, but a 62-ton.
Well, it's a big old plane.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, even so, did you served overseas, didn't you? Did you ever
in Germany? I did.
In Germany, did you go on any of the? Because I know that I've had friends that have been out to Medicine Hat. Is it out in Canada where they've done out on the ranges and they've done live firing on the ranges there?
I haven't done Canada. nor did I do Iraq or Afghanistan.
Right.
I was a bit of a tracksuit soldier at one point. So I liked skiing, so I joined up and did some skiing, and was used to go over to do a lot of adventure training in places like Bavaria. And then it got to the point where, over the course of a few years, I mean, bearing in mind, I still wanted to be a dog handler at this point.
Yeah.
And I got traded, as they call it. And by the time that happened, it was even more difficult to transfer over to the veterinary corps.
Right.
So I kind of just rolled with it. So I kind of managed to occupy myself with other things. However, I love tank transporting. You know, it's in my heart, it's in my blood. You know, the guys I worked with, lovely lads. But it wasn't always my calling, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but how many women were in the tank transporter regiment when you were in?
I can count on one hand. For a long time, there was only about 3-4 of us.
Wow.
And this was one of my slight bugbears, because for the first year or so that I was there, the females that were already there were paired up into troops so that they could be sent out to places like Afghanistan or Iraq. So when I joined and found myself on many occasions being the only female, doing all the training up there with the lads, when it actually came down to the nitty-gritty of actually going out, I was then told numerous times, "Oh, you'll be here for rear party.
No.
You'll be here for rear party." Why can't you take me out? Well, because the accommodation you have to share with all the blokes and that sort of stuff. And I'm like, well, I do that here. Yeah, but it's a bit different out there. And I'm like, And it became a bit of a, how do I put it? Just became a little bit bugging. So, yeah.
Were they being overprotective, or was it just? I mean, it is a male-dominated part of the army. In years gone by, you know, the tank drivers. Bear in mind that tanks didn't come about until 1914-18 war. Why do you think they did that?
Well, I think when I turned up, there were people's emotions at the time, because this was all kicking off, were quite delicate emotionally amongst the ranks anyway, because some of the guys didn't come back.
Yeah.
So, you know, whether or not, you know, there was an underlining feeling that if they'd taken another female out, then, you know, I don't know. I can't speak for the higher ranks. However, you know, I did my bit whilst I was there. I think it took maybe 3 or 4 years to gain a level of respect from some of the guys. I mean, it weren't until we were on an exercise and I had to solo pull a Fijian guy out of the cupola top of the het. This was all under exercise, you know, blank fire and all that sort of stuff. And I did it. Do you know what I mean? Not a problem. I mean, yeah, he was a big lad and I got him out, not a problem. And it wasn't until he then told the guys that actually I didn't help her. She did genuinely pull me out, when I noticed there was a bit of a shift in attitude.
Right, yeah.
Which was nice. And then we had a PT lesson one afternoon, and I was up there with my sergeants at the time, having just come back from an injury. And after I had a captain pull me up into the top corridor and say to me, "Well, you're doing so well. How would you like to have a little reward and go to Cyprus and work with the UN?"
Fantastic.
Like, oh.
If I have to.
All right, then.
So you went to Cyprus?
I did. This was, I think, when did the tsunami hit on Christmas Day? It was 2010, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. So I went out there and took presidential dignitaries around the buffer zone, which was quite interesting.
Really?
And then, yeah, and I've also got artwork that actually sits on the buffer zone with all the guys that were in our centre troop. All our names are on the wall somewhere. I was told that one day, if it all comes down, it will all go to the National War Museum.
Oh, fantastic.
Which is quite nice.
I'm going to take you back a little bit here because, I mean, the tank regiment, as a child, we lived in Munster. So,
right, up in there.
And my dad was a military policeman, but our next door neighbour, a guy called Dave Bloomfield, who went on to coach the Canadian bobsleigh team, he was a tankie, and then he transferred to the Paras. So I've got a picture of me as a very small child, 2, 3, sitting on the front of a tank. But it's not only tank regiment that drive the tanks, is it? You've got the Lancers and people like that. Do they all drive the same sort of tank? Or?
So I didn't drive the tanks. I drove the Oshkoshes, the vehicles that carry them, because the tracks only have, I can't remember, if I'm being honest, we're talking some years ago, I can't remember the distance, but to save the track mileage, because tracks have pads on them, don't they? So to save the track mileage on the vehicles, that's why we would then transport them on the Oshkoshes.
So, but were you ever trained to back the tank off? I mean, you wouldn't back it off because you can turn the turret round, but.
So we didn't drive the tanks. We knew how to dispose of them if, we were told, well, the emergency stuff was inside them.
Yeah.
However, when you're loading one of them onto the back of a flatbed, you always have a driver. So then we would jump up onto the top of the back end of the trailer, and it can happen two ways. So you have a guy driving it, then you have a guy standing on the top of the trailer, giving him left or right or forward signals.
Yep.
However, if it was a tracked vehicle that didn't have a driver, then we'd get the winch ropes out, fire up the APU, and you have like two. They're very loud.
I bet they are.
Yeah, two winch drums on your left and your right, and you have a load of levers, and you'd lay your bed out with all your chains and whatnot, and you'd have a guide rope that went off the top of my head now. You've got to bear in mind I haven't done this for like 15 years. A guide rope that went under at the back, and then one, I think it was on either the left or the right at the front. And as you pull in one winch drum ahead of you, towards you, the other one's got a bit of slack, and it's strange, but it brings the tracked vehicle up onto the bed. It kind of rolls it on, and you have full control. And then when you've got to the point where, if you can imagine the flatbed, you have the legs that go down, if that makes sense.
Yep.
At the back, and then you've got like a bit of a degree angle where the vehicle would then pivot.
Yep.
So at that pivot point, you can either adjust left or right, and then bring it forward, and then it would come up at such a high angle, and then you'd hold it, and then once it's there, then it's not just one person doing it. You've got to bear in mind, you can do it with two, but however, you normally have a whole team of you putting this thing on a bed, so everybody would know exactly what their jobs are, and
right.
You have to do it safely, because the person behind that winch drum with those controls literally has everybody's sort of life in their hands. The last thing you want is a vehicle with no handbrake on, weighing over 60 tons, rolling off that bed and crushing one of your muckers. So
that would hurt.
It would. I mean, I've known guys who have left their rifles before now on the beds, and it's rolled back and they've crushed their rifles.
Well, I remember that they were doing an exercise out in Canada, and one of the guys decided to sleep underneath the vehicle, underneath the tank, and because it sunk in the mud and crushed him. And I mean, that is horrendous. When you're driving, the lorry with the tank on the back, I mean, that must be such a buzz, because everybody, it must be like driving a Rolls Royce, convertible Rolls Royce, or a Harley Davidson, because everybody is looking at you. If you're going on the public highway, that must be the biggest buzz ever.
Well, I mean, they're really interesting vehicles, and they are a sight anyway. However, as a female, it's quite funny when you're really high up, and you'd expect to see another guy driving his Tesco lorry, for example, or a supermarket lorry, and double take, and so to go, oh.
It's a girl driving that, and guess what? She's got a 62-ton tank on the back. It is amazing. I always remember watching them come down from Harwich, but they'd come off a vessel at Harwich and they'd go on a convoy, I suppose back down to Salisbury or somewhere like that, or wherever they were at the time. And it was quite a sight as a kid to watch the army convoys. I'm a Colchester lad, so it sort of meant a lot to me then. So let's move to Cyprus. You go to Cyprus and you're looking after dignitaries. Who were these presidents?
That's not as a tank. That wasn't as a tank transporter.
No.
No.
So who were these dignitaries?
They were just presidential dignitaries that would come for meetings, and I suppose just use it as their base. I didn't really take much notice of who they were, if I'm being honest.
Right.
My job was really to patrol up and down the buffer zone, and when these dignitaries would turn up and would want to know more about the area, then it would just give them a little bit of history of the base, really, that we knew of that specific area. So, but they do a rotation, or they did do at the time. I mean, I believe it's all changed now. I think it was either 6, 9, or 10 months or something. Please, I mean, I'll get slated if I got some of these figures wrong.
Not by me, you wouldn't. Okay, so anyone listening, be kind.
Because you got to bear in mind, you're talking what? Oh God, I haven't done this it's nearly 12, 15. I think it's 15 years, 10, 15 years.
Right.
So a lot's happened. I mean, I can barely remember what happened yesterday, let alone 10 years ago. However, there used to be a rotation with UN troops. So I was situated in what they called Centre Troop, based out in Nicosia, and there's 3 troops. I mean, you've got the one in the middle, one to the left, one to the right. So we stayed in the Ledger Palace Hotel, and I mean, you only have to Google it, you'll see for yourself. It was all shot out. You still have like bullet holes all over the place. Right. And we had a couple of engineers with us who quite cleverly, there was a swimming pool, in the hotel, which was based outside, and us squaddies, on our downtime, really wanted to jump in this pool, height of summer, very warm, but it was green, and they couldn't take the water out because the sides of the sides would just collapse in on themselves. That's how what's the word? Dilapidated,
yes, I get it.
That's the word, yeah. And that it was. However, to their wisdom, they managed to fix it.
Did they?
So our downtime, yeah, they did. That was, so we spent many a time on our downtime in that pool.
Fantastic.
But you'd get these little call outs every so often, where, because it's either at the beginning or the end of your tour, the two sides would throw stones at each other. I mean, you've got to bear in mind that, you know, the buffer zone can be as wide as a football field in some places, but then as narrow as maybe like 1.5 meters in others.
Wow.
Yeah, and you've still got like people's houses literally as they fled from their houses with their teacups and their dinner plates still set on their table from where they left all those years ago.
Did you ever get into the buffer? Did you ever get into the buffer zone? Did you ever cross into that area?
Well, I had to patrol it all the time. You could never stop. So I managed to see parts of that country that people aren't allowed to see, which is lovely. And then halfway through, I took food up into the mountains because there's still people out there that still have to have food aid delivered to them.
Really?
And then, yeah, I can't remember now. I think it was the Turkish side, where they go up into the mountains. They deliver these great big blue crates with like fresh fruit and veg and supplies, basically. And then they still, at the time, I mean, you're bearing in mind this is like 10 years ago, so like I say, it could have changed. But then we went out and did some mine clearing as well. So you had the guys go out and clear the mines, and we just assist them with that.
And because
a mixed bag, really.
You changed your beret at this point, haven't you? You're wearing a blue beret.
I am, yeah.
United Nations blue beret. So you're working for everybody, basically. That's the. What other nations were out there with you at the time? Was it just?
I was only with. So I was only with the guys that.
British forces.
British Army guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I think they get Aussies out there and French and all sorts that go and police that particular zone.
It's quite funny. I mean, we had a gig. It's a serious job, but you know, it's still quite, at the time, it was still quite delicate out there. I mean, I had the UN guys, we're not armed. The only thing that we are armed with is a radio and a ballistic vest. And in the evenings, you drive around in the white Hiluxes with, you got to remember to put your flag up. But you have to be very, very careful out there when you're actually on the buffer zone, because there are still air pockets along there that are disputed.
Right.
So, and it could be, the turning of a wheel in distance of what's disputed and what isn't. And I remember going out there, and a friend of mine who I shared a room with as well, we stopped in an area just to do a quick pause, make sure everything was all right. And the next thing you know, we've got some soldier shouting and screaming at us, dog barking at us, all sorts, and all we could do was talk our way out of it and just move on. So,
wow.
You have to be really careful where you stop on that buffer zone, because it's a disputed areas. Or in the day, being very careful not to go near any stray dogs.
Yeah, I bet.
Which is funny. Yeah.
I mean, now it's probably getting a lot of attention at the moment because of the things that happen in Israel and Palestine. Because obviously, if we've got British nationals that get involved in any of that and they've got to be evacuated, the Cypriot area, the Cyprus, the base there, would be the launch pad, I suppose, to do that. And I would imagine that
on a clear day you could see it. You could see it if you went down to the coast. You can actually, on a very clear day, you can actually see the area.
How long were you in Cyprus?
So we left. We were there for Christmas. So I think it was 9 months. It was either 6 or 9 months. We were there for Christmas when the tsunami hit. There was a tsunami in the country, and it was all plastered over the news. Just remember seeing on the news that this tsunami had hit somewhere and wiped everybody out. I can't remember, if I'm being honest. Yeah, and I came home after that, leave the army, then rejoin the army, and transferred from tank transporting to the MPGS.
So you rejoined?
Yeah, so I went after that Cyprus, after my stint in Cyprus, there was talk about 16 tanks leaving Germany. So within a year, they had left. When I left, I signed off, did the whole meet another soldier, get married, leave. He stayed in for a while, and I had a baby at the time, and it was the risk of being having a young family and being split up into two different areas that something would have to give.
Yeah.
So we made the decision that I would, take leave. So we did that, and we got posted down to Borden, Hampshire.
Right.
Because he was Remy, and it went downhill very quickly. And we ended up leaving. My daughter, I had a young baby daughter, and I moved back down to Devon, where I was originally from. I spent a couple of years just sort of, what would you say? Would you say licking your wounds, regrouping, becoming a single parent, and just finding my way again. And I still kept in touch with the tank transporting community, some of the guys that I'd worked with and got on well with, and they were doing a charity bike ride, and they actually stopped. I remember a few of them stopped at my little masonette that I was staying in, and they said, "Oh, why don't you join the MPGS? If you miss it, because they have a better work-life balance." And that's exactly what I did.
And the MPGS is the Military Police Guard Service?
Provost Guard Service.
Military Provost Guard Service. And they are a regiment in the army, or how does that work?
They are classed as regular army. However, they fall under the category of non-deployable. Right. So, which means that you're never going to be called up for the likes of an operational tour. You sign a different type of contract. Off the top of my head, it was something like, if you're needed anywhere else, then the most it would be sort of 20 to 30 miles to the closest base that you are currently at most of the time.
Right.
So I joined. I joined. I looked after the guys down in Dartmouth, BRNC.
Oh, okay.
And which was great because I lived in Newton Abbot at the time, so it wasn't too far to commute. And then I still had this burning desire to still want to be a dog handler, and I, to the point that even they used to have a dog working unit at BRNC. However, they've gone and disappeared now, but they still had the old kennels. And I remember in my downtime when I was on a shift there, I'd do up the kennels in BRNC because I used to take my own little dog with me to work. Only a pet dog.
Yeah.
And I then found out that they had a working dog unit in Watersham in Ipswich, and I was like, great, can I go? Can I go? Shall I take that plunge? So I did, and I think we're looking at 2016. Me and my daughter and my little Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, we just, packed our bags and off we went to Watersham. So and I've been here ever since.
Single mum Laura takes her child, a Cavalier King Charles, and then takes on another dog. A working dog?
No. So I went to, so I got to Wattersham, and I did meet a guy that, quickly, started and finished, or finished as quickly as it started. And I then met my partner, and I was a single parent, one child, wanted, just doing the routine of 4 on, 4 off, juggling childcare at god awful hours, and I wanted to do the dog handling at Wattersham. And they're nice guys. They are nice guys. I sit here and I won't, run them down. However, dogs who walk around a camp patrolling aren't the sort of dogs really that would, although they're still trained to do the same and they're still current to do the same, there isn't the excitement, maybe might be the right word,
Yeah.
as if you were going to do it on an operational tour.
No, of course.
So, love them to bits, but I kind of saw them as being glorified dog walkers, and really nothing was happening.
I will edit some of this because you've got to live around some of these people.
No, it's fine. No, it's absolutely fine. I've said it to them as well, Anyway, so, I wanted to do it, and I again was faced with, you're a single mum, surely you can't work nights, you're a woman, a lot of misogyny, if I'm being honest. And I met my partner, and we had our youngest, who is now 4, and it just got to the point where, when somebody says, no, you can't do it, no, and there isn't really, for me, I don't accept the word no, I don't accept the word you can't, because I will, and I've already done it, kind of, that's my attitude.
Yes.
And and if I say I'm going to do something, I will endeavour to find a way of doing it. And I'd join the army. There's one thing off my bucket list that I've done. I wanted to be a dog handler, and if somebody's going to tell me no, then I'm just going to find another way around it. So I I suppose that's a good female trait, really. We know when to be stubborn.
Yes.
But yes, so I had my youngest. She was born poorly, and this was just on the cusp of lockdown.
Oh.
Did some research, and you had to do your SIA licensing to even become a security guard, and then I wanted to do everything properly, by the book. So I went and did my NASDU with a company in Luton, and cool. You'll never forget the first ever working dog you've worked with, ever. Lovely dog, Cara, her name was. She was an old Mallee dog, but she was spot on. And they'd retired her, but she was good enough to train other people or train dog handlers. And I just took to it like a duck to water, really. The way I see it is I've changed my rifle for a dog, because the rules of engagement and the orders that you give are very similar to how you would speak to a dog, or how you would fire a weapon, to how you would deploy a dog, are very similar. And that was really good transferable skills. So I then came to be a dog handler, but I didn't have my own dog. But I had the foundations there. So I went then to basically work the circuit as a security guard. And I came up with got not so far from where I live, actually. There was a company. And because we were on the cusp of lockdown, he had pups. And I did not want one of his pups. I don't know if you, Paul, if you're of a certain age and you remember the K9 movie, with, is it James or Jim Belushi?
Yeah.
And he had a
Belushi's, yeah.
German Shepherd, called Jerry Lee. Now, I wanted a Jerry Lee. Naivety there. And everybody, even to this day, if I turn up in my vehicle, it's, oh, you've got a German Shepherd in the back. No. So I found this company, and they seemed really keen that I'm fresh out of the army and I'm keen to learn. And they talked me round in having one of these pups, which was a Dutch herder crossed with a Mallee.
Wow.
And I was a bit naive, if I'm being, there was some, naive at the time. And I agreed. However, it was a massive, massive learning curve. The equivalent of the breeds of dogs. I mean, you've got an Alsatian and then you've got a Dutch herder crossed with a Mallee. It's the equivalent of passing your driving test, and instead of jumping into a 1 litre Corsa, jumping into a Ferrari with this Mallee cross Dutch herder or whatever.
Yep.
So she, very high drive, and then she hit her first season, and it got to the point where, I wanted to tie her up to the fence that I got her from and walk away, if I'm being honest.
Oh, really?
She still is, but I won't give up easy. I will not give up easy, and I stuck with it. And unfortunately, the guy that I got her from made all these promises. Yes, we'll help you train her, get you through your NASDO, because you can have your NASDO certificate to say that you're competent to working with a working dog, but then you can also have a team certification, which basically is like a license for you to work with that dog, and a third party has assessed that animal to prove that it is capable and it ain't just a dangerous dog that bites kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that you're competent with it. So, and that was my aspirations. I wanted to be team certificated under NASDO, with a dog. And okay, I wanted a Jerry Lee. However, I got a Nala, which is my dog now. And she turned out to be a cracking dog. However, I needed a lot of help, but I had to go and seek that help elsewhere from the person that I got her from.
Right.
And yeah, it cost me thousands, actually.
Really?
And I paid £4,000 in the end. So I did all the basic obedience, and by the time she was 2, I sent her away for 4 weeks, just basically like an intense what they call it, protection work, because I couldn't do that protection work on my own. I'm not going to teach that dog that it's okay to potentially bite me. So that's somebody else. I'm not going to. It's quite dangerous, isn't it? Really.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I did, and then I got her back. Spent a week or so with her, rebuilding that bond with her, and then we both went away again, and we both got assessed, and she passed.
Wow.
So, and she's had my back a few times, Paul. She's, I'm going to be biased, aren't I? But I mean, I'm so glad I stuck with it, because she's a phenomenal dog.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting her yet, but I know that the people that you worked for for us,
Yeah.
are very, very impressed with her and the work that she's done. What does the future look like for Laura? I mean, the security world is murky, and the dog world can be even murkier because they're not all Lauras out there.
No, so if I'm being honest, I never intended to set up my own security company, if I'm being brutally honest. However, after working a few years in around the circuit, I had people that I worked with because I would ask questions. I'm not afraid to asking the questions that might make somebody feel uncomfortable because I probably sometimes don't have a filter. But it got to the point where I had other dog handlers and people that I worked with basically say to me, look, if you were to ever do this on your own, we would come with you. And it kind of went from there, if I'm being honest. And what I learned so before I even went and looked for clients, Paul, I made sure my paperwork was in order first, and all the experiences that were I would see as quite negative, such as there's companies out there that will sub out a dog handler or a security guard, and they won't do the basic background checks. For me, that's a no-no.
Absolutely.
Sometimes a security company, will just pin drop somebody they perhaps met off of Facebook, a location, tell them a key's under a rock, and then get that person to go and look after that site, having never been on that site before.
Incredible.
Now, I've seen it. I've not done it, but I've seen that, Paul, and it just occurred to me that things need to sort of change a little bit. And what I have found is the way that I work is quite different to a lot of the security companies out there.
Yes.
So what underpins us is citation. So we have citation for our health and safety and our HR. And I won't have a guy or girl, be it a static guard or a dog handler, go onto a site having not been inducted onto that site first or having not had additional training. And the beauty of citation is that you can do awareness courses. Now, to do your SIA license, they brought in the first aid and all that sort of stuff. But, your first aid runs out after, 3 years, is it now? 4 years?
Yep.
So what, people, the ones, again, with the transferable skills from the military, they called it, I don't know if you know, MATs. So MATs would be, you do like your CBRN or your, not CBRN, that as well, but your first aid,
right,
CPR. So you'd learn that every sort of, once a month, wouldn't you, on your MATs to keep you current. And where citation comes in is that we can do that for our guys.
Oh, okay.
Or warning signs on a site, for example. If I'm going to have a guy on the site, I'm not just going to say it was a construction site and there's a great big hole in the middle of this construction site, and you want the guys to know what those signs mean.
Yes, you do.
Know what I mean? Walk around it, and so that so health and safety is something that sort of underpins, and fairness as well. And the guys that I'd like to think, I mean, I've never had any negativity, as touch wood, that the guys feel appreciated. They feel like someone cares. They do their standard, because they're classed as lone workers, whether or not you've got a dog with you or not.
Right.
So your hourly check calls, for example, or I will just go and do a site visit and turn up on site and go, "You all right, guys? You got enough tea and coffee here?" Or even at Christmas, they're all getting a Marks and Spencer's dinner,
Right.
for example. They feel appreciated. They know what shifts they're going to work a month in advance. And it can be quite a cutthroat industry, can't it?
Oh, yeah.
Security.
Yeah, it can.
We tend to not do the whole let's sub something out and sub it out again and again and again. So
everyone earns 50 pence an hour, don't they?
Yeah,
that way, it's just.
I can see the business side of it. However, the guy on the ground is the one doing it.
I agree.
And I give my guys enough rope, and they're adults at the end of the day.
Yep.
They should know the standards, the values and standards that we hold. And this is why we don't like to sub, because for the client that brings us in to secure their site in the first place, there needs to be continuity. It needs to be safe. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I absolutely agree.
And to provide a good service and to be fair all round. I mean, it baffles me. It just baffles me. And I perhaps sometimes should be a bit more hard-faced, but that isn't part of my makeup, Paul. So this company is growing through word of mouth, through our honest intentions and our ability to do what we say that's on the tin.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're VAT registered, you're doing everything above board, you're paying your staff the right money, and everybody's happy because the unscrupulous traders within your industry, they're nicking monies left, right and centre out of people's pockets just to cut corners.
I don't believe in cutting corners.
No, I know you don't.
Right,
scare the life out of me.
No matter how hard something is, I'm a great believer in old sayings, Paul. Nothing worth doing is ever made easy. That's
very true. That's very true.
But
you've entered a male dominant role again, haven't you? I mean, you obviously you obviously like a challenge. You go from driving tanks to having a land shark in your car.
Well, I suppose, to be honest, perhaps it's all I know, really, now. After, what do they call it when you're working, with the...
You're institutionalised. You're institutionalised, yeah.
Yeah. And I kind of know what I'm getting with the blokes, if you know what I mean. They will give as much as they get, and they know it. But not in a harsh manner. It's, you treat people with respect, you're going to get a whole lot more back.
Yeah, you are.
And that, you don't, I've had, and one of the guys that works for us, he was promised the world, and he gave a lot of loyalty to a company, and he never got the career progression that he wanted. Hence why he's now with me and L&C, because he can see a future in it. He gets treated with respect. He gets asked and not told.
And there's a lot to be said for that.
He gets asked whether or not he's available. If you just start shouting. I mean, tonight, for example, the guy I'm talking about there, he's off tonight. I've given him a night off. He wanted a night off, and I have no problems in rolling up my sleeves. And as I speak to you now, I've got 2 dogs in the back of the car sitting on the site that he normally looks after. Don't mind. You see, I will never expect the guys that work for us do anything that I wouldn't be prepared to do myself.
No, of course. But that's leadership. That's proper leadership. You haven't sat somewhere and typed an email and expected everyone to have read it. Laura, I say this to everybody because this is a police thing, but have you got anything you'd like to add, alter, or correct in relation to what you've said this evening?
Only that please don't batter me if I've got the weights of a Chally 2 wrong.
Well, it's been
that was a while.
It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I'm very grateful for your time. And I look forward to catching up with you again soon, and hopefully I'll get up into the wilds of Suffolk and we can meet up for a brew.
That'd be lovely. Okay. Thank you for having me.
No, not my absolute pleasure.